Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for the game show sweeping the nation? It's start, bench, or cut. Coming up next on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the good folks at Draftkings and their new PickSix app and Homerun Forecast. I'm Jeff Erickson here with Fred Zinkie. Fred, lots of big notes from Monday, starting off with a Monday surprise IL trip for Fernando Tatis Jr.
Yeah, this is certainly a big deal, and it looks like it won't be the minimum. It looks like he could be out until the All-Star break. So, I mean, Tatis has been not maybe fully what you were hoping for when you took him in the first round this year, not you specifically, but all of us. That being said, he's still on pace for about 100 runs, maybe 30 home runs. The steals are disappointing. He's only on pace for maybe 15 to 20 steals. I think in this steals environment, we felt like we'd get 30 plus. So that part's been a little disappointing. But in general, he's been pretty good. So yeah, anyways, out for probably about a month. And anyways, so that's a big impact to him and a big impact to the Padres who are hanging around in that glob of teams. Trying to make that trying to get the wild card spots.
And the thing that's frustrating is he missed games over the weekend due to a triceps injury, and somehow it gravitated down to his femur. And it's a stress reaction in the quad portion in his femur. So obviously this is something that's been bothering him for a while too, although he couldn't tell by his performance lately. He's actually hit very well. He's had 2 stolen bases in the last 21 games. So it's not a ton of stolen bases, but he also hasn't been a slog either.
No, June had been his best hitting month of the season by a mile. He had hit 5 home runs in 20 games this month. He was hitting 365 in June. So yeah, other than the steals, he was doing everything. The RBI were a little low, but other than the steals, he was doing kind of everything that we wanted this year. And when you factor in that he's hitting second, maybe you don't expect a monstrous RBI total. It could have been a little better. But anyways, about a month without him in this offensively, not. I would deprived might be an exaggeration, but offensively kind of deprived environment.
Challenged.
Yes, challenged.
Yeah.
It's hard to find replacements for him. And you're not going to find, I don't think you're going to get David Peralta, who's probably going to get a heavier role for the Padres, even though he's not in the lineup today. Probably going to have a heavier role for the Padres, but I don't think he's your answer.
Yeah. Peralta, Donovan Solano, who's also been getting a lot more playing time as of late. They're probably the guys that benefit the most in terms of playing time. I think Bryce Johnson just got called up. Tyler Wade is available. Eek. Yeah. Bryce Johnson just got the call. He's the guy that's basically replacing Tatis on the roster. The Padres, this is what they've been kind of doing all year, though. The bottom couple spots in their lineup have been kind of mix and match to begin with there. The fact that Solano has kind of emerged as a guy that's been a regular playing time guy is someone that is worth paying attention to, I guess. But the other thing I wanted to point out is Jackson Merrill. I deserves a little bit more love again. He's hitting 288 on the year, 10 homers, 37 RBI, 35 runs, 9 stolen bases. We'd like to see better K to walk, 14 to 46, but it's also not disqualifying. 46 Ks and 285 plate appearances. You'll take that from a rookie, a 21-year-old rookie at that.
Absolutely. Major power explosion this month. He's hit 7 homers already in June. The steals, he's just been kind of consistent, just 2 to 4 a month. But we'll see where the power explosion goes, even if it tails off. If he's a 2020 player at his age as a rookie in a season where rookies are doing really poorly, rookie hitters are doing really poorly. I think this Padres lineup, I thought it was going to be really top heavy, but then when you look at Merrill doing better than expected, the trade for Luis Arias, Jerks and Profar coming out of nowhere to have a good season for them. All of a sudden, when Tatis was in it, it was decently long. I'm not giving Solano much credit, but you have Ha-Seong Kim, who hasn't hit well this year, but has some potential, hitting near the bottom of the lineup. All of a sudden, it was a pretty decent lineup. And they've just run into this with Tatis, and then with the pitching injuries on top of that, with Darvish and Musgrove out, those are 3 pretty key players for them. So we'll see if they can survive that and just kind of play 500 ball until Darvish I don't know, had a setback, but he should be back at some point. And then Tatis, they get back in the middle of July, and we'll see if they can just hang on for about a month and then get back, stay in that race and then try to push ahead.
Right. And, thank goodness they went for Luis Arias when they did. And that's what smart teams do, is they make the trade early. Now, granted, we talked about it was a Godfather offer for the Marlins. That's what it took to get it done. But you know what? They got the player for 2 extra months. Everybody else is waiting to the trade deadline to see if they're in or not. And meanwhile, the Padres have these banked wins at least. And I think that's really something that's pretty important is, in a muddled NL wildcard picture, they've been able to at least maintain a little bit there. They've gotten great work. Erickson Profar, obviously. Dylan Cease, that trade, that's another trade that happened at the start of the year too. Let's not forget that's also something that happened very early on, and they went for it there. I like teams that go for it there. I'm very happy. I'm happy to see them rewarded. With Yu Darvish out, unfortunately, and Joe Musgrove out, it means they're getting more starts from Randy Vasquez, who pitched well last time out, but I didn't think was something that showed that he had like any long-term value there. And Adam Mazur, who is a good prospect, but he's struggled so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can see the Padres are such an active team on the trade market, and you can see easy ways that they could upgrade their team. I mean, if they just get Darvish back and their other pitchers stay healthy, then the rotation would be solved. But that's a little bit of wishful thinking, especially Musgrove. I don't think that's really going to happen for them this year. So maybe they could use another starter. In the lineup, you can see how it would be easy. Like when you have Donovan Solano playing as your DH the last 3 days, it would be easy for them to make a trade at some point. Like Solano is having a little bit better season than usual, but he had absolutely no power. He's 36 years old. He's more of a bench infielder. Like it would be easy for them to go out and acquire, some sort of slugging first base DH type, outfield DH type. And it's an easy fit in that lineup. You get Tatis back. Maybe you slide this slugger that you trade for in and around 5th or 6th in the lineup. Yeah. Anyways, I think it's easy to see how they could emerge from the pack and make the playoffs this year. So
I'm worried about the long term about Yu Darvish. Last year he had the bone spurs in his elbow. This year he's had the neck, the hamstring / groin, and then a little bit, according to Mike Schilt, of right elbow inflammation. You don't like it when kind of like Tatis, where you're sidelined with one thing and then another thing crops up. It's kind of whack-a-mole there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is just what it is like with Darvish now. Maybe like he's going to be 38 in a couple months. He threw 136 innings last season. We'll take the under on that this year. I think this is just what it's going to be. He's 38, like he's cruising in towards 40. I think next year when you project him for 125 innings or something like that, and hope that you get more. We hope that you get more than that. But I think the days of seeing Darvish even through 165 innings are probably over.
Yep. I'm going to use this point in the podcast as my forum for complaining about my team. Bear with me for 1 minute. Uncle Ted cites that it helps when you got the Cy winner, Matt Waldron. Yeah, Matty Ice Waldron has been great this year. 84 Ks, 27 walks, 343, 116. For a 5th starter, a guy that was waiver wire material there. He's been really good. He should have another win though, and I'm very annoyed at that. I told you off air, Fred, I had 4 blown wins yesterday, 2 in the same game, 1 on each side of the game in the Blue Jays and the Red Sox. Tanner Houck left with the lead. The Red Sox gave it up in the 7th. The Blue Jays actually went ahead 6-2. Bassett pitches another inning even, and then the Blue Jays blow a 6-2 lead. So I lose both of those wins. I lose Matty Waldron's win when the bullpen blew that, and then Justin Steele at the end of the night. Ban the win. Let's get rid of it.
Yeah, it's a pretty terrible stat in fantasy. I always try to think back when these things happen in June. I always try to think, this will all even out. You'll probably have a night somewhere in the season where you have 2 starters go and they produce a 6 ERA and they both win. And you'll be like, well, I guess that evens out for that night that I should have got a couple wins and I didn't get any. So maybe it'll all even out. I'm all in for discussions on banning the win. I don't hate it with a passion, but I do like my fantasy sports to somewhat mirror the real thing, and wins don't really do much to show me how well my pitchers are pitching.
Brian Bloomfield from Baseball HQ, IP over wins is the hill he'll die on there.
Yeah.
We have the alternate category league in Tout Wars where we do innings pitched instead of wins. And we also do Scholds, holds plus saves
Yep.
instead of saves, and I'm on board with that after seeing Evan Phillips pitch the 8th inning yesterday too. That was so bad too. I'm super annoyed at it. No, I'm not really advocating for that. I think it's a fun way to play, and I'm sure there's negatives involved with that too. I kind of do perversely enjoy the win. It's just not when it's like that.
Just not last night.
Not when it affects me. It's the height of my hypocrisy revealed there. Reds had some big news yesterday. Let's start off with TJ Friedl going on the IL. He played over the weekend after getting hurt in the middle of the week. They put him out there over the weekend, and unfortunately, he couldn't get 100%. And now he's out back on the IL, probably at least 3 weeks on this one here with his hamstring.
Yeah, this is just one of those nightmare seasons for TJ Friedl. I mean, he opens the season with the fractured wrist, then the fractured thumb, now the hamstring. Like, we're talking 3 fairly significant injuries. All the different parts, the wrist and the thumb are on opposite hands, like all the different body parts. We haven't even hit the All-Star break. It just feels like, we'll see. I mean, he could still get it together and have a really good second half, but it just feels like one of those seasons. Every year we see a few players this happens to, where just nothing can go right for them. So That's what it's feeling like right now. I think you drop him. I think it's a hamstring. I wouldn't say that, I guess, for sure. I think I'm just so frustrated that I feel like I would drop him, but maybe that's overreacting, because especially you get the All-Star break in there. I know it's a hamstring and he's a base stealer, but you get the All-Star break in there, which basically gives you like a free week, and maybe he comes back after the All-Star break. So maybe I don't drop him just yet.
Maybe not. Meanwhile, Nick Lodolo went on the IL today with blisters on his pitching finger. This is from Sunday's start against the Red Sox. He'll be out a couple weeks. Remember, pitchers are always 15 days. Hitters can be 10 days. So that's also annoying too. That means you're guaranteed to miss more starts.
Yeah. So Lodolo, a couple weeks puts him, maybe he gets a start in before the All-Star break. I mean, it's a blister, so it doesn't feel like it'll be like a long-term thing. I was just checking to see how much they can only backdate it to yesterday. He gets in one start before the All-Star break. So annoying if you have him in your lineup, because you probably have him in your lineup if you have him. He started on Sunday, so you have him in your lineup this week. You're going to get a 0 this week. You get him out next week, and maybe the week after you can put him back in.
This is similar to Justin Verlander going on the IL after the Monday night game started last week. Tough.
Yeah, for sure. You've been getting a lot of goodness from Nick Lodolo. The last start didn't go well, but overall 2.96 ERA, 107 WHIP. Not a typical like monstrous Nick Lodolo strikeout rate, but like fine, like about a K per 9. Like the past Nick Lodolos, we'd see 11 or 12 Ks per 9, but now we're seeing about 9 K per 9, so about a K per inning. So anyways, good enough.
Yeah. Sorry for the people who don't like to hear main event talk. Too bad. It's my podcast. I'm going to talk about what I want. But we are focusing on news. Moving on. Elly De La Cruz hit one to the Steamboat yesterday. Reds woke up despite all the bad news. They really torched Bailey Falter and company.
Yeah, he has. He's part of our topic for later in this episode of people who have struggled in June. But Bailey has definitely faltered, which we saw coming. His last 4 starts, he had 1 good one and 3 stinkers. I don't know. We saw this coming. He had a ton of BABIP luck. The BABIP luck has regressed. He's been awful in June. If you rode him in May and got all the good stats and all the 7-inning starts, then good for you. But his ERA is up to 4, which doesn't look terrible, but lately he's been terrible. So I would say Bailey Falter. It's jumping ahead. Our sneak preview of later, he's an easy drop, especially for low strikeout.
Well, he wasn't an even easy ad.
That's right.
He was a streamer at tops anyhow. In your 15 teamers, he's rostered, but you're streaming from your bench with him.
I brought him up, I remember, on this podcast about 3 weeks ago, probably right before all this terribleness happened, and just said that in a couple of my leagues, like I was like, how is Bailey Falter on waivers? His whip is below 1. My comment was on this pitching rich environment where you've got a guy at the end of May who's been starting all the time and has a whip below 1, and he's still sitting on waivers. But it's because, and I didn't even pick him up. Like I maybe bid $1 or $2, put him in my waterfall, but I didn't even pick him up. but it's because we were all looking at the low BABIP, the poor strikeout rate, and saying this 1.0 whip is going to be like 130 or 135 or something going forward. And that's what's happening.
Yeah. And it's absolutely the case there. Meanwhile, I had to watch that Elly highlight like 10 times. And there was one Twitter follow, Reds Daily, where he had the Reds TV broadcast, the Reds radio broadcast, the Pirates TV broadcast, and the Pirates radio broadcasters all reacting to it because it was such a shot. It was fun. I'm sure you could have found the same thing for Vlad's huge homer yesterday as well.
Yeah, for sure. But I was actually out last night, and by the time I came home, the Jays had blown the game again for their 7th loss in a row. So I just decided I'm just going to sit that one out and just pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
I used Elly as therapy, so that was nice. Bryan Woo got hurt again, unfortunately, and that's what he seems to do. Unfortunately, pitches well, then gets hurt. This time, not his elbow. Instead, it was a hamstring injury.
Yeah, so at least hamstring, at least like it's not another arm injury. That might have been, I don't know, that might have had me thinking about maybe dropping him in some leagues. But hamstring, okay, as I already mentioned, we've got the All-Star break in a few weeks. He's just been so good when he's been healthy. Only 8 starts, but an ERA under 2, a whip of 0.69 is incredible. 3 walks in 40 2/3 innings. Like you've got to wait him out.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, frustrating, but you got to wait him out. And at least Bryan Woo, like I have him on a couple teams. It's frustrating because I feel like he could really help my pitching if I could ever just get like 10 straight starts out of him. But at least like I didn't invest in him as my ace, number 2, number 3. So I still have those players going for me. So I don't feel like I'm totally left. I can put Bryan Woo on my bench or on my IL slot, and I still have enough pitching.
Yeah. It's at least it's the either he's good or he's hurt
Yes.
sort of dichotomy. I mean, at least there is that. Clayton Kershaw, setback for him. He's been shut down for a week. He had started his rehab assignment, pitched 1 rehab game so far, and now he's been shut down for a week. Not bueno.
No, as Scott Pianowski says, injury optimism is never your friend. So I took Kershaw in our Labor League really late. Don't regret it. We have unlimited IL. Took him really late. He's sitting in my IL. Hopefully I get a couple months out of him later this season. That's all I was ever hoping for. But yeah, it's always a good reminder, like be on the late end of injury, especially long-term injury timelines. Even Scherzer, who's back, like he maybe barely met what our expectations were for Scherzer as far as a return date back in March during draft season. Like maybe he met it. He was close, at least close. I don't know if he totally met it. He might've been a little late, but at least he was close. Kershaw looks like he's going to be a little later than we expected, but it's just a good reminder when you're looking at injury timelines, even these players that we're talking about today, like just expect them back on the late end. And if you get that better than that, it's a bonus. But especially because we haven't talked about this, but today, but a lot of the players that we're talking about, like they're interesting in trading leagues. Right? Like they're all buy lows right now. If you wanted to, you can get TJ Friedl probably really cheap right now. You could try Bryan Woo if you need pitching help and you're like, well, I can't afford to pay for a really good pitcher. I'll grab an injured Bryan Woo and hope that he does come back in the middle or second half of July from this hamstring and then does string together, 10 starts in a row without an injury and actually does really help me. So you can do a buy low on these injured players. It's just like, don't get too optimistic on them.
Obviously you have to have IL spots. It's really hard to play that game when you're limited in roster spots. Whether it's the NFBC with 7 reserve spots, or even Tout Wars where we have only 4 IL spots. I know I've pushed up against, and this is in the onlys, I think only that we do this there, where I've pushed up against that already. I've had more than 4 IL players, and it's a real nightmare to try to manage which ones are you going to keep, or do you, or you lose a streamer, or you lose a spec play, you lose a platoon bat, whatever the case is, you have to make a hard cut. I have another league, my original league. It's the harshest of them all. 3 reserve spots, no IL spots. I mean, it's like you can't stash anybody there.
Right. Well, that can also cut both ways in a trading league, though, because maybe the person who has Bryan Woo, Nick, TJ Friedl, maybe they have a worse injury situation than you do, and you can get them really cheap.
Yeah.
Where you're like, hey, if you're going to keep Bryan Woo, you're going to have to cut this guy who.
Yeah, why don't I send you this live person who?
Yeah, the guy I'm offering you isn't great, isn't very good, but he's better than what's on the waiver wire.
Yeah.
And you would have to cut someone who's pretty good if you're going to keep Bryan Woo. So I'll give you something for him. Like that can cut both ways too. In fact, I'm always thinking about different angles. I don't always have time sometimes nowadays to put them to test, but I always like to think of different angles to trade. And that has been one of mine in Intel Wars before, for sure, is to just look at people who have had massive amounts of injuries at the same time, and then maybe swoop in and be like, hey, I've got an extra live body here. Like I got actually an okay player on my bench that I could give you for one of these injured players.
Or even go big,
and I will wait.
Yeah, or even go big to the Tatis owner and say, hey, I know you just lost Tatis.
Right.
What can I offer you? Good player X. Can't be, you know, I'm trying to think of what would be.
Tatis or Corbin Carroll, who would you rather have the rest of the year?
I think Tatis. I'm sorry.
I think me too. But it's actually like, at least like Corbin Carroll's playing, it would at least be a discussion.
But that's the whole point. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I think about it there.
Yes.
And you'd bet on, okay, 2.5 months of Tatis versus 3.5 months of Carroll. And the risk that Carroll is actually hurt or something like that.
Carroll has to play better than replacement level to make the trade worthwhile, because it's 2.5 months of Tatis and a month of a replacement level player in your lineup. But again, it's all league specific. You get someone with maybe too many injuries, and you go to the Tatis owner and you're like, hey, and Carroll is just a random guy throughout. Like maybe offer him. Bo Bichette would be even worse. He's stunk, but he's back now. Maybe offer him Vladdy, who's actually played really good, but has not been as valuable as Tatis. Yeah. Something like that. I don't know.
So let us know in the comments if you're streaming live with us. Who would you offer to try to get Tatis right now? What's the best player that you would offer for him? Not the worst player, because anybody can do a garbage offer. I want to know what your real offer is. What you would offer to try to trade for Fernando Tatis in a redraft league right now. Let us know in the comments. We'll share some of those. Another news note for the Mets. They lost one of their veterans, Starling Marte, out for a month due to this knee injury here. He was actually having a decent season, but this is kind of also what he does. 278, 7 homers, 30 RBI, 38 runs, 12 stolen bases, but he's out at least 4 weeks.
Yeah, this is Starling Marte. We talked about him, I think it was last week, where he has had stretches where he's been pretty productive. He just hasn't. He last played in 145 games in 2018. Since then, he hasn't been at that total. He played 132 in 2019, which is still you're missing 30 games. There always seems to be something. So this season, he's going to miss some time now. He's probably going to finish the season with, I don't know, say 110 games played, 120 games played, something like that. So, which is pretty typical for him. So this is what happens with him. But I would keep him in most formats. I think, like, there hasn't been that much hitting to come by. Hitting 278, a little bit of power, kind of was on pace for about 15 homers before this. Obviously steals bases. I would keep him where I can.
Yeah. I would try to.
Yeah.
It might be difficult, again, if you don't have IL spots there.
Would you keep him or Friedl?
I would keep...
It's close, eh? I think Friedl went earlier in drafts.
I need to know the official time prognosis on Friedl. It sounds like 2 to 3, right?
Yeah. There's timelines. I think Marte's out, 3 to 4, and Friedl we don't really know yet.
Friedl's had more recent injuries, but Marte's hurt every year. I know this because I've traded for him last year and then got 1 game out of him before he got hurt. So I don't know. By the way, y'all are a bunch of lowballers when it comes to Tatis. The best offer I've seen so far is Jared Jones.
Brutal.
Yeah, I think there's some purpose. No one's going to take Eugenio Suarez for Tatis, even in an 18-team league. Come on. Suarez is getting benched. He's not even playing every day. Come on, give me a real offer here.
Uncle Ted says starters are a dime a dozen. That is a pathway right there, though. Like, if the Tatis owner maybe could use a starter, and you have, like, there's a lot of teams out there have plenty of good starters. Maybe you offer a good starter for him. Not Zach Wheeler, but you offer a good starter for him that the person can put in their lineup.
And if I had Tatis, I would not accept Jared Jones because of the risk of a shutdown, because his form hasn't been great lately. I need even better than that. I'm just going to ride it out with Tatis if that's the best I can do.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so give me real offers, people. I want to see this here. This isn't binding. This is just This is for
Yeah.
discussion's sake. No one's going to hold you to this, but just give us a real offer. That's all I ask.
Mhm.
And your opponent's not reading this there, so don't give ridiculous offers. All right, let's move, before we move on to our headline topic of the day of start, bench, or cut. Here's a quick note from our sponsor at DraftKings. Did you ever play the over-under game with your friends? Think I can eat that slice of pizza in under 30 seconds? Or I know it'll take you over a minute to down that 2-liter? If you have, then you're going to love PickSix, the new fantasy game from DraftKings. Here's how to play during baseball season. Pick between 2 and 6 players and choose at the more or less of a stat, like runs, hits, strikeouts, and more. Track your picks and play against others for a shot to win huge cash prizes. That's all there is to it. Download the new DraftKings PickSix app and use code RWPicks. New customers play $5 and get 50 in PickSix credits. That's code RWPicks for new customers to play $5 and get 50 in PickSix credits. Only on DraftKings PickSix. The crown is yours. One per customer. Non-withdrawal PickSix credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 18 plus in most eligible states. Not available in all states, including New York and Connecticut. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibitive. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Also, we're on the Blue Wire Network. Here are their ads. All right. Thank you, Blue Wire. Thank you for their fine, intrepid advertisers there. And, of course, thank you to DraftKings as well. We'll maybe hit up the Cubs and Jays. It's like a broken record with them. But let's start playing. Start, bench, or cut. Fred, you're Canadian. A lot of great talk show hosts from your lineage there. So thank you for coming up with the next new game show offer.
Yeah, Canadians love their game shows. So here we go. Start, bench, or cut. These are all players who have had terrible months of June. All the hitters have an OPS under 500, and all the pitchers have an ERA of 6 or higher. And Jeff's going to play game show host today and throw them out, and then we're going to talk about whether we would keep starting them, or put them on our bench for a while, or send them to waivers.
All right. I'm going to start off with the guy I think is the most obvious, that tough decision on the hitting side, because he's rostered almost everywhere still. That's George Springer. And he's starting to lose playing time, even with the Jays. With some of the call-ups that they've had lately. It's a tough look for George Springer.
It is. I'm going to say with George Springer, 12-team league cut, 15-team league. I guess I'll bench him for a couple more weeks. When I say bench, I mean mostly bench him. Maybe I squeeze him in if the Jays have a favorable series or something on a Friday, Sunday, or a Monday, Thursday, or something like that. But mostly bench him. I say 15-team league, there's just not much on waivers every week. So I think I'll keep him for at least a couple more weeks, see what happens. But 12-team league, I'm actually okay with cutting him.
Yeah, I think so too. My problem is where I have them is a draft champions league, which means no pickups, which is just unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're just stuck with him. But
yep.
I mean, the BABIP's low and everything else, but he's hitting a ton of ground balls. The quality of contact, it's not good. He steals a few bases. That's the only thing really that he's got going for him right now. I know it's not worth it. And I just don't know. Like you said, the playing times become at risk. The Jays have fallen out of the race. They do have to get something out of Springer in the sense of what are they going to do with him? Are they just they can't just bench him. At the same time, they can slow his playing time. They're trying some of these guys like Addison Barger. They can give him 2 or 3 days off a week, at which point he becomes even less appealing for fantasy.
When we last saw Shota Imanaga, he was getting crushed by the Mets on Friday. It's 2 bad starts in a row with him. I know there's a lot of people are saying, okay, as soon as it heats up, that fly ball, those fly ball tendencies would get exploited. Is that what's happening here with him? Are you looking to try to trade Imanaga in a panic? I'm kind of leading. It's kind of a leading question if you ask me, but what are you doing with Shota?
I'm good. I'm just going to keep starting him. I'm going to take the terrible start against the Mets and just swallow it. I know he had the one bad start also around the end of May. I guess he also did have the one against the White Sox, which is concerning, but the runs just weren't earned. But he's not walking batters. Like you said, he's given up some home runs in some of his starts. I'm not panicking yet. he's still got an 81-12 strikeout to walk ratio. We know how important strikeout to walk ratio is in evaluating pitchers for fantasy. So I'm just gonna ride this one out for now. Like if I benched, it would be like, I haven't even looked because I don't have him in a lot of spaces. But if I benched, it would be like maybe for his very next start if the matchup looked poor, like maybe a 1-start bench. But that's it. I'm not panicked yet. What do you think?
Yeah, I would think at worst he's like someone now all of a sudden I start to look to spot a little bit more. Like, and I'm using him Wednesday against the Giants for crying out loud. The question is next week. Imanaga is a 2-start starter, which is great. First starts against the Phillies, not great. But he also gets the Angels, which you want.
Which is
so
pretty good. Yeah.
Pretty
good.
Yeah. So I think so. I think I'm still rolling him even in a 2-stepper. Obviously, if you have daily moves, I'd probably sit him for the Philly start. That's the way I'd probably handle it.
Yeah.
So I would do that as opposed to ace is going to ace.
Yeah, there's a perfect example. Like if I'm not feeling good about him going into the Philly start, the odds of him dominating the Phillies are probably not that great. Like of me missing out on like a dominant start. So I'll take my chances and sit out 1 start and then go from there. But he's not someone like when I talk about benching Springer, like I'm not that worried about Imanaga, and I'm not going to sell low on him at this point.
Yeah, some mitigating circumstances suggested by Chris Kristen suggests that the Milwaukee bat game was because Imanaga had been out for a week, not sat, but you know what I mean, had a couple extra days of rest. And I do remember that was like, they gave him those extra 2 days and it didn't work out too well. Merrill's been pretty bad defensively. I'm just more worried about this Mets start on Friday. That's the one where it was just really the wheels kind of came off. That's the one I'm worried about. But obviously I'm using against the Giants. I'm using against the Angels. I just may try to hold them out in the very worst matchups, which is something earlier I wouldn't have done. I would have just left them in over everybody. Adam suggests a trade. We're talking to Tatis offers. He would have offered, this is a 12er. He'd offer Elly Garcia or a Tyler O'Neill type, or even Joe Ryan as a starting pitcher for Tatis. That's a real offer right there. That's a guy that is a plus value player, better than an average player, not necessarily a star. That's what I'm looking for right there.
Yeah, Elly Garcia is not having a good season, but he's still good. He still does a lot for fantasy. Like he's having a bad season. He's still on pace for 30 home runs and say about a dozen steals. So Joe Ryan's having a really good season. Again, that's what I was talking about. Maybe you go in the other direction if you have pitching to trade. With Joe Ryan, actually that makes a lot of sense. I think one of the guys I was thinking of just off the top of my head, someone I have a lot of, was Grayson Rodriguez. Like Grayson Rodriguez isn't having an awesome season, but he's been fine. He gets a lot of strikeouts. He pitches for one of the best teams in baseball. Like
has had an IL trip, but yeah,
you can have him right now. So anyways, those are, I think now we're more in the vicinity. Elly Garcia, if he was playing really well, you probably wouldn't offer him for an injured Tatis, but he's not. But he could come around. But so that, I think that's an interesting offer.
I agree.
This is what we're talking about. Be reasonable.
Yeah, exactly. And you can turn a long-term profit. A good trade should make both parties a little uncomfortable. This is a Chris Liss thing. He's always said, if it's a no-brainer for you to offer it or to accept it, it's probably not a fair offer.
Yeah.
You want it to have it where, unless it's like later in the season, it's like, I have a surplus in this, you have a surplus in that, and it matches perfectly. That almost never happens. Usually you have to have a little bit of, I'm not so sure, but it's going to help me, but it's also going to help you. The goal on trades isn't necessarily to win the trade against your trade partner. In fact, you're a trade partner, not a trade opponent, is the way I look at it there. I don't always counter an offer. If I think if the trade is right, I'll take it. Especially because I don't have, just buckets of extra time. If I find a good deal, it's hard to find a good deal in some of my leagues. I'll take it. So I don't know. I'm not always looking to try to quote unquote win the trade. I'm trying to help my team. I think that's the dichotomy there. And people play the game differently. I respect those who think differently on that. Let's get back to another trade, another edition of start, bench, or cut. Leody Taveras was helpful for us for quite a while. He's really started to slow down for the Rangers.
Yeah, I'm a cut. I think he's always pretty, even in 15s, I would be okay with cutting him. In fact, I think he's always pretty fringy. Like he's just actually not a great hitter. When things are going well, he can hit 260 and contribute, the odd. He had 14 homers, 14 steals last year, but he's not hitting well. He hits low in the lineup. I'm out. I'm okay with cutting him. If you have bench space, like I don't have to force cut him. Like I don't have to cut him just for any guy off waivers, but I'm okay with cutting him.
Yeah, I get it. It feels hurtful to do so though, because he's gotten us through some tough times earlier
Yeah.
there. But yeah, I hear you. Often bats ninth in the order
Yeah.
too.
17 RBIs this year.
Yeah,
17.
yeah. You're just not getting the benefit of the bargain, free rostering him. You're supposed to be, if you're going to lose out on RBI, but you're supposed to be getting like double digit stolen bases. He's at 8
Yeah.
right now, so that's
Yeah.
one. It's like 2 a month, or 2.5 a month. That's not going to do it.
I think some of it does depend. Like I'll give him credit. He was good in May. 17 runs, 3 homers, 3 steals, 272. Totally good. But April terrible, June unbelievably terrible. If you can't put him in your lineup right now, I guess if I had a ton of bench space, sure. Like I don't have to force cut him, but I'm mostly a cut. I wouldn't think twice about it if there was someone I want on waivers and I looked at my bench and I was like, I think Taveras is the guy I'd have to get rid of. Then I'd be like, sure, I'll get rid of him.
Yeah. Carlos Rodon has had 2 terrible starts in a row. But over the course of the season, he has 9 wins, 386, 121. Reason for concern or just a blip on the radar against 2 tough opponents in Boston and Atlanta?
Yeah, definitely 2 tough opponents. I think Rodon is fine. Like I think he's someone you mostly start. Maybe you spot a little bit. Depends just how good your pitching is. And in a lot of 15s, you don't really have the option. You're probably just gonna have to start him. But to me, like obviously, definitely not a cut, especially with him pitching for the Yankees. Like he has 9 wins for a reason. He pitches on one of the best teams in baseball. So yeah, I think he's someone who you just stick with. But maybe, like we were talking about with Imanaga, maybe you're just a little more cautious with him over the next, for his next start. His next start's home to Cincinnati. I think I roll him out there.
All
Oh, if
right.
I have that right, no, I'm not. I think I'm wrong on that one. On his next start being home to Cincinnati.
Yeah. Next. So I've got the projected starters grid
Yeah.
up right now for Rodon's next starts
At Toronto. Even better.
Even better. Home against Cincinnati, not at Cincinnati too. So that's actually good. And then those are his next 2. I only looking 2 weeks.
Yeah,
in
that's good enough.
Yeah.
If Toronto really smucked Rodon the way Toronto's playing right now, then maybe I'd think twice about the next start. Maybe give him a 1 start breather because he's kind of killing you. But I bet I would gladly start him against Toronto.
Yeah. All right. The pitchers have been easy so far. This is a little bit harder, right? Because I think you're definitely keeping them and you're probably using them anyhow. Next pitcher is Yusei. You only hear what you want to. Kikuchi from the Toronto Blue Jays, the slumping Toronto Blue Jays, losers of 6 straight. Kikuchi has 4 wins on the season, so you're not, he had some better outings earlier in the year. He's kind of struggled lately. So what are you doing with Kikuchi, who draws the Yankees and the Astros in his next 2 starts?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So I may bench him for at least the Yankees start. Overall, I still think Kikuchi's a buy low, like in a trading league. So he's dealt with a 342 BABIP this year. That's by far the highest he's ever had in a season. Like his FIP's 343. And the Blue Jays aren't terrible fielders. Like they're losing games because of the bullpen. They're losing games because of the hitting, but they're not terrible fielders. Like he should be getting a little more help out in the field than he's got, or it's just bad luck. So anyways, I think Kikuchi is a buy low in a trading league. You might be able to get him really cheap right now. I also think there's a chance he gets traded this summer. And if he does get traded, it'll probably be to at least a decent team. I don't know if getting traded really ups his value, but maybe it depends where he ends up, obviously, but we shouldn't hurt it. Yeah, so I think he's a bit of a buy low. Maybe I sit him for the next start if I still have that, if I'm not in a weekly league and I still have that option, just to see, is there a hidden injury, something like that. The Yankees are a really tough opponent. The Yankees have some really good right-handed hitters. So maybe I sit him for that game and then get him back in the lineup.
Yeah. I would think, like, say if you needed a spot to pick up Aroldis Chapman because you needed a closer.
Sure.
I would be willing to cut Kikuchi for that. Ooh. Keep in mind, he's not helping you in whip. 133 whip, 127 in his good year last year.
Yep.
That's his best whip ever.
Yep. He's a whip herder. Yep.
He's a guy that puts on base runners. 2 bad starts coming up in a row.
Yeah.
at least bad opponents. I would at least consider it. I wouldn't avoid. Let's just say I wouldn't avoid picking up a free agent I needed in order to hold Kikuchi. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. You could run into it if you had some injuries. Maybe you have some injured pitchers that you don't want to get rid of. Like I don't think I would cut him anywhere, but the whip point is actually really good. Like he hurts your whip in his career all the time. He hurts your whip in every year. This isn't like Luis Castillo's had some bad whip years and some great whip years. Like Kikuchi hurts your whip, so is something worth remembering.
Yeah. It is worth remembering that. Before we tackle a few more names on that list, let's go take care of a little bit more business from our friends at Homerun Forecast. Can certain weather conditions lead to more home runs? The atmosphere can affect how far a baseball flies by 20%. Homerun Forecast measures the weather conditions at a ballpark to tell us if the atmosphere is good or bad for ball flight during a game. An index value that rates the air is created for each game and ballpark and is displayed on a scale from 1 to 10. Homerun Forecast premium site offers index values by the hour for each game. 24-hour forecast, wind direction and speed, and even whether the roof will be open at certain stadiums. Homerun Forecast is offering a special for the rest of the baseball season. You can get access to the premium site for the rest of the season for only $28, a savings of nearly 30%. Go to homerunforecast.com/RotoWire now to sign up. Talking start, bench, or cut. And we're going to hit up a few more of these guys from Fred's list here. Let's go back to the hitting side. Maikel Garcia was a revelation early on. Not so much lately. Kind of tracks with how like the Royals' fortunes are going, I feel like.
That's it. And I felt like it was predictable that the Royals would have offensive troubles at some point. I just looking at their lineup, there was often a gap between, like, say, their team OPS and their spot and runs scored in the league, where it just looked like they were maybe over their skis a bit. So both the team has cooled off and they've run out of luck a little bit. With Garcia, yeah, it's a major difference. Like he hit, actually his best month was May, so he was heating up. June, awful. 21 games, he's hit 145. He salvaged a little bit of value by stealing 4 bases. It's the bases that might keep him in your lineup until he gets back on track as far as the batting average goes. I would say with Garcia, I would mostly be continue to start. I think.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
me too. And here's the thing: who are you going to find that's better? That's been third base has been just a troublesome spot this year, especially
still hitting leadoff all the time. Too, right? He's still hitting leadoff all the time, so like the runs can still come in, even if he's not playing well. At least some runs can still come in. So there's that aspect too. Like if they had dropped into the bottom of the lineup, I might have thought, oh, there's less potential. But to put it in perspective, in this terrible month where he's hit 145, he scored 10 runs. And we're not done. So he can still score runs. He can still steal bases. That's 2 out of the 5 categories. I think I'll just stick with him.
Yep. I think that's the good play there.
But worth noting that he's been that bad this month.
My guy in many leagues is Ryan Jeffers as my second catcher. He was awesome for the first 2 months of the season. He has been awful lately and losing playing time to Christian Vasquez. Colleague Mike Curlin cut him in his NFBC main event league, the only person to cut him so far, at least in the main. I'm sure in 12s it's happened a little bit more. What's your level of concern about Jeffers? Have we gotten the best from him, or is this just the normal ebbs and flows of a season?
I think both. I think we got the best of him because the normal ebbs and flows are happening, and now he's flowing into who he really is. I think Jeffers is who he is. He's a low average, a bit of power, number 2 catcher in fantasy. And I think, last year he got this ridiculous 359 BABIP, so he didn't look like a low average catcher. This year it's back to 252. Now he's back to being a low average catcher. June's been especially depressing. I would, in a 15, I'm keeping him. In a 12, I guess I'd at least I'm in the category where I would at least just look at my waiver wire. You know how if you have 2 good catchers, you just don't even look at the waiver wire and catchers on Sunday because you're just like, I'm not getting a third.
I've got that covered. Yeah. It's nice. It's relaxing.
So with Jeffers, if I had Jeffers in a 12, I would check the waiver wire on Sunday. I wouldn't necessarily be like, okay, I'll take anyone just to get this guy off my roster. In a 15, I would check the waiver wire. In a 12, wait, let me backtrack. 15, I'm keeping him. 12, I'm checking the waiver wire and just seeing what's available. I'm not force cutting him in any of those formats.
Fair enough.
There we go.
I'm going to do the either or thing because there's two catcher eligible players at least that were big time pickups last week in terms of like priority. Ben Rice for the Yankees, who's catcher and first base eligible, and Fermin on Kansas City, who I picked up in a couple of 12 teamers this past week. Let's start off with Rice versus Jeffers. Who do you got the rest of the way?
Jeffers. I'm just not sure what's going to go on with Rice, so I'll take Jeffers for now.
All right.
I guess.
There was a snap call until the end when you said I guess there. All that like certainty just evaporated there.
Yeah, and I will say, you know what? No, I'm changing my tune.
Oh,
I know. This is one of those. This is like a let's make a deal. I just took the other door, or what's in the box or whatever. I'm going to take Rice. Just here's my thought. Here's my thought process on this whole thing. He could be a lot better than Jeffers. I know he just got rolling here. He's only struck out 3 times. He's walked 3 times. Now, he hasn't done anything notable with his bat yet, but at least he's not getting overwhelmed in the strike zone. Maybe he could be a lot valuable than Jeffers. And if he's not in a few weeks, well, whatever. I'll go back to the drawing board and probably find some other variation of Jeffers, a low average catcher who can hit the odd home run on waivers. So I'm going to go for it. I'm going to take Rice.
All right.
What else you got? Who was the other person?
Freddie Fermin, and I'm going to retract it because he sat the last 2 games after getting all this playing time, and I picked him up. So shame on me for for expecting him to continue to play a little bit more. But he sat yesterday. I don't think he's in the lineup today as well. So give me Jeffers on that one there. I'm not happy about it, but Perez, they're putting him back behind the plate all of a sudden again a little bit more. I'm like, keep him at the DH. I know they just activated Massey, but they're just mixing and matching. They got CJ Alexander now playing some third base, someone they just called up on Monday, 27-year-old who is making his debut. So, at least they're trying to do a little bit of a hot hand approach is what they're trying to go for here, or instead of a long-term approach.
Yeah, for sure. For me being on the lineup, 3 days in a row going back to last Sunday, probably takes him off. I'd watch him for the rest of the week if we're talking about a Sunday Fab League. I'd at least pay attention to it in a 12. Maybe the playing time's not secure enough in a 15 wouldn't be. Although Fermin's probably gone in the 15s right now.
Right.
He might come back to waivers in the 15s, but right now he's probably gone from waivers in the 15s. So
correct.
In a 12, it'd be more likely. This is the thing with Ben Rice. In a 12, it'd be more likely to cut Jeffers for the hot hand or the intriguing prospect, knowing that the floor is at least a little bit higher of what I can find on waivers.
Yeah. When Jeffers was hot, he was hitting 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. He's hitting 8th tonight at Arizona. So just a heads up on that. But he is playing. So trade-offs there and everything.
Start somewhere.
Cleveland Guardians are having a wonderful offensive season. And this next player, Andres Gimenez, was playing pretty well early on, but he's kind of slowed down in June.
Yeah, from a fantasy perspective, he's salvaged from some value by having 5 steals, but Gimenez is hitting 172 with a 455 OPS. So he's got 2 extra base hits in June, 1 double and 1 home run. So yeah, he's slowed down. Super consistent during April and May. Not super good, but consistent. Hit 261 in 1 month, 271 in the other. A few steals each month. Like not awesome, but fine. I think my stance on Gimenez is I'm keeping him in my lineup between the fact that he was pretty consistent outside of this month and the fact that the Guardians have had a good offense this year. He's not striking out a ton this month. Like that hasn't really been the problem. So,
right.
So I think I'll keep him in my lineup.
To me, it looks like Andres Gimenez's 2022 season is just a massive outlier. In terms of the power, in terms of the batting average. That year, his BABIP was 353. Yep. It's 279 this year, and that seems more in line. The ISO is way down this year. The power is way down. 0.97 ISO, 0.097 ISO, 148, 169 the 2 previous years. Never a huge power guy to begin with. It's evaporated this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So the good lesson learned there is like when you see an outlier BABIP, believe it. Right. Yeah. And the old, like, don't buy high, like even when in draft season, like be careful buying guys who are coming off the high BABIP year. We just mentioned Gimenez. That was the same story with Ryan Jeffers. If you put too much stock, I'm not saying if you took Ryan Jeffers this year in round 20, then that's fine. But if you put too much stock in his good batting average from last year, the other thing with Gimenez is Cleveland's continuing to hit him second through this slump. In this hitting environment, I don't think you can pass up on a guy who steals bases and hits second in a good lineup. You're just going to ride it out.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. It's I think the fact that and the thing is, again, he's fantasy viable because of those bags. It's just this is more of who he is instead of like a slump. It's more like his cumulative line right now seems pretty close to being where he is as a player overall. Let's do one more in this line of questioning here. Just to highlight that Dylan Cease has dropped off after such a hot start.
Yeah, I have 0 C shares, but so I haven't followed this drop off like as closely,
Same.
but and I guess it's because I was worried about things like this. Although it hasn't totally been the walks. Actually, the walks were coming at the beginning of the season. Lately, the walks are a little high in his last couple starts, but before, like they haven't overall in the last say 7 starts like that. They haven't been that high. So yeah, but he's dropped off. Last start was against Milwaukee. That's been a really good lineup this year. Not the best in baseball, but a pretty good one. And he had a poor start. And then he had a really poor start against the Mets. That's when the Mets were on that kind of ridiculous heater that they were on, like the grimace thing and that and everything. So maybe he just got into like a team that was just really swinging hot bats at the time. In his last 5 starts, so now I'm going back to May 31st, even though this was a June thing. He's dealt with a 379 BABIP, and he's got a 34 to 8 strikeout to walk ratio. I'm just leaving him in. Even in that crummy start against the Brewers, he struck out 10. I think I'm just leaving him in until it would have to build up more than this, because I think there's a good chance. I guess I'll go ahead and look at who he faces next. Washington, I'm leaving him in.
Yeah.
I'll take my chances.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, again, who's my alternative?
I think these are just the ups and downs of the season. Like when I see that he's not walking like 3 or 4 batters every start or something, like I think these maybe just are the ups and downs of home run to fly ball rate and BABIP. And unless you're just a truly amazing pitcher, which he's good, but he's not that. Like this is just what happens over a season usually.
Yeah. You took the time to put out a good outline. I'm going to do grab bag hitters. You can tell me who you want to talk about on this list here that also made your list. Jeff McNeil, Will Benson, Abraham Toro, Jonah Heim, Connor Joe, Shea Langoliers. Anything, any of those that really jump out at you really wanted to talk about?
Will Benson, I don't want him at all. Abraham Toro, I cut because he's hurt, but I also wanted to point out that he also wasn't playing well. I'm not like a full, like you have to get rid of him, but pretty much. I don't think you keep Abraham Toro when he's hurt.
Yeah, I cut him in Yahoo Friends and Family, as a matter of fact, this week.
Connor Joe is a really interesting one to me, just in that he started off the season well, and he seems to always start off the season well. And then whenever he starts off season well, everyone who works in the industry says, don't forget that Connor Joe always starts off the season well, and then peters out. And then he did that. He's like a mid 800s OPS and March.
We're experts, Fred. It makes us look good.
If there's one thing we seem to be experts on, it's the rhythmic pattern of Connor Joe. Like I said, like a mid 800s OPS in April, into the 700s in May, and then he's hitting 123 with 1 home run in June. So I think if you're looking at his season long numbers and thinking like I can't cut Connor Joe, like actually yeah you can, because he's not that, like he started the season on waivers for a reason. So Jonah Heim and Langoliers, I kind of feel the same way about them that I feel about Jeffers, where especially Langoliers, like they're power hitting catchers. They're going to have some big games. They're going to hit some home runs. They're going to hit for low batting average. Langoliers, I think you can't cut. Like he could still hit 30 home runs this year. Even at least 23, 24 or something like that seems pretty reasonable. And he's going to have a low batting average. So, but this is like when you picked him up, this is what you're getting into.
Yep. Connor Joe, by the way, strikes me as the right. Yes, we drafted him. We enjoyed the fast start. We held on to him a week too long. We cut him. We'll pick him up again when somebody else gets hurt. Then we'll cut him again when we realize he's doing poorly. Then we'll pick him up again because we have forgotten how bad he was. Because he's playing at least. At least you're getting playing time. And sometimes in leagues like that, you're just looking for that's all you're looking for. You sort by playing time because I need anybody in there. First base has been like that this year. All right.
Yeah, I was going to say Connor Joe hits lefties well. He always has. When he plays full time, he doesn't hit righties that well. Like when you go back and look at his career, and he played in Colorado for a little bit, like his career high is 11 home runs, like 6 steals. Like you don't have to keep Connor Joe. And maybe next season our strategy should be to draft him in round 30, use him during April, and then cut him no matter how well he's doing.
That's where you're going to get off to a bad start.
I wouldn't actually. Yes, I wouldn't actually.
He'll Galaxy Rain us that.
I wouldn't actually do that. But he is he should be an on and off rosters guy, not a guy who stays on rosters.
Sure. Yeah. All right, grab bag pitchers. These are pitchers that you listed that we haven't discussed yet. JP Sears, Chris Paddock, who just went on IL. Bailey Falter, we already talked about, so we don't have to talk about him again. Zach Littell, Reese Olson, and Pablo Lopez. Hey, which one of these is not like the other? Which one could it be?
Yeah, well, Pablo Lopez came back with a great start last time out.
Sunday,
Sunday. Still bad enough in June to just make it on the list. Still has a 6 ERA in June. But like no concerns with him. I think anyone coming off a 14 strikeout start is probably good to stay in your lineup. And this is why like he's way above on this one. Although Reese Olson deserves some credit in his own right. Like Reese Olson in his career now, he's made 33 starts, 36 appearances, 3.71 ERA, 1.15 WHIP. So that's pretty good. And we've got a pretty good sample size now on the pitcher that he is. He had a 2-start stretch early in the month that went, 3-start stretch actually that went poorly, but he's righted the ship, 6 shutout innings at Atlanta, and then 6 1/3 of allowing 2 runs against the White Sox. So I'm back into, I kind of left him in my lineup the whole time and just wore it in a couple leagues until he got turned around. Zach Littell is interesting to me in the sense that Shane Baz is going to come up at some point, and I'm not really sure exactly how they're going to clear room for him. And I like Zach Littell because he doesn't walk anyone or hardly walk anyone. But if he doesn't get his butt in gear, I'm worried that he could be the guy. There's not a lot of upside with him. I'm worried that he could be the guy they send to the bullpen. Hasn't won a game since May 11th. I worry that he could be the guy. And I have a lot of shares of him. I felt like the low walk rate would really help keep the whip down, but he's just been like really hittable. And now this week I'm starting him in some leagues because he's facing the Mariners, who aren't a great offense. But I started him like in a couple leagues where I just didn't have a lot of great options. But this is kind of a bit of a watershed moment for me. Like he needs to pitch better this week, or else I might be out on him.
Yeah. I think that's, he's like an accounting guy, last in, first out, you pretty much that last in the rotation. Now I'm using him this week after benching Littell and some other weeks because he gets the Mariners and their 27.5% strikeout percentage. So I'm going to go.
How about this next week? He's a 2-start pitcher at Kansas City, at Texas. That is a really tough call. I don't subscribe to the theory that you have to start someone in a 2-start week or else you might as well cut them. Like there are ebbs and flows in a season and sometimes you just can't. So like I know people,
and there's extreme examples of that too, opponent wise. Kansas City's already slowed down offensively.
And Texas is like just below, actually a little bit below average in runs scored this year. So the matchups actually aren't terrible. That being said, I'm not feeling confident in him. He's going to have to look good against the Mariners. Like if he goes, 6 1/3, 1 run allowed or something, okay, I might jump in on him next week. Again, look at the strikeouts, etc. But I don't know. I may not have the guts, and it may be a bit of a team by team look. I have a couple teams that are out in front in wins and strikeouts, so maybe he doesn't start in those. And then my teams that are middle of the pack in those categories, I take a chance on him.
Speaking of the Rangers, quickie quiz.
Yep.
How many home runs does Nathaniel Lowe have so far?
I have 0 shares in Nathaniel Lowe, so I don't know, but I'll say 5.
2.
Wow.
2. Wow. Remember he started the year on the IL.
Now I waited till after I made my guess, obviously. Then I pulled him up, but 21 RBIs this year.
Massive disappointment. Runs. Yeah, he's only played 57 games because he started the year hurt, but still.
There's another guy where 2 years ago, go back to 2022, he hit the 27 homers. He hit 302. He had never been anything like a 302 hitter. You look at the BABIP that season, it was 363. Like, just go ahead and put like a 30 or 40 point batting average drop in. And sure enough, he dropped 40 points last year. He rose about 40 points that year, dropped about 40 points the next year, has sat around that point. The power, not having the power, you're right, is what's killing like fantasy owners for him right now. It's not the 256 average, but
kind of killing the Rangers too. They have all these guys not hitting for power. I mean,
I keep waiting for that offense to come around, but like Jonah Heim also on our list, right? Of terrible June performers. Adolis Garcia was almost on the list. Yeah, like he was close. Very close to being on the list. So there's another terrible June.
You know who is hitting well right now? Finally, Wyatt Langford. He's actually starting to hit. So get hype. As Clay Link likes to say, one time ever. I keep playing back at him, but. At any rate, I do think that's the point is Texas hasn't been Texas this year. offensively,
No.
but they're always they still seem scary to me. So
Well, there's
that's
just
a
the
tough part.
potential. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not groundbreaking journalism for me to say there's potential in an offense of a team that just won the World Series, but
yeah,
there's
groundbreaking.
yeah, no way. Fred believes in Texas.
Yeah.
Why? But anyways, there's potential there. Even guys like Ezekiel Duran at the bottom of the lineup, like he gets on base. We talked about that Leody Taveras, even though I said cut him, like, and I still would, but he's not a totally useless number 9 hitter on a major league team. I don't know. Josh Smith hitting third is concerning, even though he's been playing actually really well, but long term.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. They just need Garcia low to come around Heim, and they would be okay.
Yep.
Maybe it does. I could see it clicking for this team at some point.
Yeah, I could too.
Yeah.
Let's finish with a note that you originally started the outline with, to kind of push it here to this point though,
Sure.
but Heston Kjerstad got the call again. The news on him getting the call came out about 3:40 Pacific time, 6:40 your time, i.e. about an hour 20 minutes before the Tout Wars Fab deadline. I picked him up in AL Tout Wars. I was gonna do a speculative pickup anyhow because I've got just 2 garbage spots to fill. So might as well go with a guy with some upside. And I raised my bid from like 13 to $35. I should have lowered it to $1
Yeah.
because he went unopposed. I'm surprised at that a little bit in an AL only league that someone, I mean, were we that scarred by his first experience in the majors, or this year's experience in the majors? Give me your thoughts on him.
Yeah, so I added him in a
Your
lot
stat.
of leagues, and it probably won't work out. And I'm actually okay with that. And I'm with you. So the person who tipped me off to this promotion was you with your little cryptic tweet that you put
Yes.
out. Sometimes the best news, and I was like, "Oh God, what's he on about?" Like,
Yeah.
I gotta go search. Thanks, Jeff. Don't put the name in.
I have to make you work.
Yeah, you
Yes.
did. So, but it was okay. I did a little bit of work. Within a minute, I knew what it was, and then once I did, I thought, like, are we really this reactionary that Kjerstad is already some sort of post-hype sleeper where just because when he got the call the first couple times, nothing happened, that we're out on him? I just felt like, so I won him in almost every league. I won him for bids like $5 out of 1,000, maybe
Mhm.
13 out of 1,000, like basically 1% bids. I didn't put him in my lineup in a lot of leagues. I think I put him in the lineup in one. They do have a 7-game week this week. Like I got to think he starts at least 3 games this week, maybe 4 out of the 7. So I think I put him in the lineup in one league where I'm not doing as hot offensively, didn't have as much outfield depth, but some leagues I left him on the bench. But are we really at the point? Like, this guy was the number 2 overall pick in the 2020 draft. He has an OPS in the minors this year around 1,000. Baltimore has a great lineup. I know we don't totally see his path for playing time. He played yesterday in his first game. He didn't play today. He's not starting today, but that's against a lefty. Like, maybe he starts against righties. Is this guy really in this year where we're struggling to find offense? Do we not have room on the bench to put $10 down on Heston Kjerstad? Like, I did not think I was going to win him everywhere. Maybe some of it was that he came up Sunday, or that the announcement came Sunday late in the day, but it wasn't that close to 10 o'clock Eastern for NFBC leagues. Like, we had plenty of warning
We had
in
3
NFBC leagues.
hours. Yeah,
Yeah,
basically.
that's enough time for a few other people. I don't know. I just thought when I put the bids in, and I did put him at the top. He wasn't in my waterfall, but I did put in, just like I say, like around $10 in my leagues. Just again, like, come on, like, I know rookies haven't hit well this year, but the chance to just hold him for a week or two for $10 and just see how much the Orioles play him.
Right.
That's got to be worth it. I think at the top of one of my bid was like Jesus Sanchez. I forget who else was in it, but maybe Will Benson was in there. Like, it was bad players. That was available in the outfield in a 15-team league.
Don't say that around the Jesus Sanchez fan club.
I
It's
think
like saying
Kjerstad,
things about Tua. You
right,
you don't do it.
right. I think Kjerstad
On
was
Twitter at
actually is
least.
actually UT only in NFBC, which also makes him unappealing. But again, the whole point isn't to start him. The point is to grab him for $10, put him on your bench for a week. By the end of the week, he might have his outfield eligibility, or at least early next week, he'll have his outfield eligibility.
Right.
And if at the end of this week, like if he starts twice all week, I'll just cut him, and I wasted $10 and a bench spot for a week. Like, that's got to be worth it for a prospect. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like in this industry we're too fickle. And
Mhm.
this is one of those times. Like, when I was scrolling through at 10:15 my results, and I was like, "Oh, got him. Oh, got him." And like you said, mostly unopposed, or maybe the opposing bid was $1.
I'm just
And
mad I went to 35 and was
I hear you.
unopposed,
I
but
know. I
uh,
know. I don't think it, but
Kjerstad
I
had
don't think
two.
that was dumb.
Yeah, Kjerstad had 2 hits yesterday.
Yeah.
He's not in the lineup against the lefty Logan Allen today, but Wednesday through Saturday, the excuse me, the Orioles the Orioles face 4 straight righties. So
Right.
this will be a pretty good bellwether.
Right.
Excuse me.
And yeah, no, I can
Of
pick up
what
there
his
while
playing
you
time.
finish your cough. Yeah, like yeah, this is a chance for him to maybe start 3 out of those 4 games. And they're not aces. A lot of these pitchers, John Gray just got roughed up. Scherzer's just back. I know Scherzer was an ace at one point in his life, but just back from that season opening IL stint. Michael Lorenzen is pitched way over his skis and should probably have an
Mhm.
ERA in the mid 4s. Yeah, I think there's a chance here. Like, let's say he hits a couple homers, or maybe just has a couple 2-hit games. And then at the beginning of next week, they play the Mariners. And what are the Mariners loaded with? Right-handed starters. So maybe he gets to stay in the lineup. I know the Mariners pitch well as well, but maybe he gets to stick in the lineup. My thought is just I don't know. Like we get turned off these players so fast. And I know it's not easy to see how he fits into the Orioles lineup because it's such a good
Mhm.
lineup. And some guys like Ryan O'Hearn have played so well that they just, even though they lack a bit of name value, they can't come out of the lineup. But um, he's hitting so well. He had like Christian Encarnacion Strand type numbers in the minors this year, and the number 2 overall pick from few years ago. So there's the prospect pedigree.
Yep.
That's got to be worth in every NFBC league. That's got to be worth $10 or $20 and a bench spot
Yeah,
for a week.
it should. It should. And the thing about the O's is they have had, Norby got a sort of call. Even
Mhm,
Stowers got a sort of call.
mhm.
None of them have gotten a full run. Holiday obviously flopped in his first time and is now hurt. But that happens. It doesn't mean
Yeah,
that they're done. I mean, it just means that they struggled initially there, and so many times. I mean, you're right. It's early to be calling it post hype sleeper because
yeah.
he got the call last year for
But we
crying out
treated him like one when you
loud.
looked at those bids. I can give it a little bit of grace saying he got called up a little late, but and I know this will hurt you because I think he's on your main event team, but Colton Cowser
Oh
has
yeah.
has been
That's
awful. Like
Yep.
after he had almost 1,000 OPS in April, 580 in May, 587 in June. He's hit 3 homers since the beginning of May. He's hit under 200 since the beginning of May. That's almost a 2-month sample size now. Like, what's stopping the Orioles if Kjerstad got some hits from just saying, okay, we'll put Cowser, who's younger, we'll put Cowser back in the minors and is a similar left-handed hitting outfielder. We'll put Cowser back in the minors and let him try to work his stuff out. We'll give Kjerstad a bit of run now.
Right.
So, like I can see it. There's your obvious path for playing time. Kjerstad has some good games. Cowser kind of becomes the 4th or 5th outfielder, or like I said, maybe spends a little time in the minors trying to get back in action.
So yeah, my interest was twofold, and why I was looking to add him, and why I'm holding Norby in AL only tout also is the Cowser issue
Yeah.
is why one of the reasons why I went after Kjerstad, and then also I think you look at their rotation now. Suarez has had 2 bad starts, albeit
Well, they
against
need a
good
pitcher.
opponents.
Yeah.
But Bradish is out for the year. I think, and then Dean Kramer was supposed to come back Sunday. Instead, they had him pitch in the rehab game Saturday, and he couldn't get out of the first inning. So I think they need another pitcher. And I think they to do that, they may need to showcase one of these guys.
Oh, and this team, like the way they hit and the young players and the patience of the fans and the building, like this team, you cannot go into they won't. I know they won't. They will not go into the postseason with Burns, Rodriguez, and then Cole Irvin.
Dot
you
dot
know,
dot. Yeah,
and Cade Povich has not pitched well since he's come up, but there's potential there for sure.
yeah,
But
he's been okay.
you're
Yeah,
not at this point, you're not counting on him. You know what
right.
I mean? To pitch in a playoff game after he's had 4 starts. And he's got 14 strikeouts and 10 walks. Like, we're not thinking about that at all. So this is a team, and I don't think it's going to take, unless they can aim really high. Like, it's not going to take like a Cowser or someone like that to get a starter. Like, they could just go out and get like someone we talked about earlier, like a Kikuchi, and they don't
Yep,
have to touch any of these players. They can
right.
go down their prospect list fairly far, grab
Like
like a
they did
mid-level.
for Burns, for crying out loud.
Exactly.
Although I think Lopez is better than I think a lot of people are giving him credit. So we'll see
Right.
about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, for sure. But
Uh,
so
yeah.
if they could go massive, right? Like you're talking about, like
Hmm.
Colton Cowser goes and they get like an absolute ace starter, someone
Right.
like another Burns, and they give up like a really high level outfield prospect because that's what they have. I don't know if they'll do that or not, but like you say, it's a possible path.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that all the more reason to kind of speculate, and you should be speculating on other teams too. This is the time if your league allows for speculation, do so, because either these guys are either going to get the promotion or they're going to get dealt and they'll get the playing time in the new organization. Either way, you kind of win, and it's better than some of the guys were kind of just churning. Is the way I look at that. There.
It's I love this time of year because it's such a fun, creative time of year and for fantasy baseball managers, where we got a month basically till the deadline. You've got almost a free week in there for the All-Star break, where if you're carrying a bit of a thin roster, you can work it. And you can be creative. You can start thinking about which teams may trade their closer, which teams may, like you said, trade prospects, and clear space and things like that. And if you're right, all of a sudden on August 1st, everyone in your league's looking for a certain player on waivers, and you're like, got him. I got him a while ago. Maybe this is a little on the early end on that, but it's not that far. Like another 10 days or so, and you start getting where you're like, okay, I can hold this person through the All-Star break in a couple weeks after that.
For sure.
So that when everyone goes looking for them, I've already got them.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
By the way, Gunnar Henderson just did it again. 2-run homer in the first inning. Not lead off. It's a 2-run homer. I mean, Lindor's hitting now, so it's less painful than it was before, but it's still painful. I need more of Gunnar Henderson in my life than the 1 or 2 leagues that I have him. So, so good. So good.
Number 4 going into tonight on the RotoWire earned auction value calculator is Gunnar Henderson. I took Jose Altuve. I've mentioned this before, over him in some leagues. Altuve's actually played really well, but not Gunnar Henderson well.
No.
Like I can't hate on Altuve. I also took Pete Alonso over both of them in a lot of leagues, and I had.
I did Lindor and Alonso over him. So good times.
Yeah, I like crummy. Henderson's just been, and like I've always come back to this. Like, what's the difference between Corbin Carroll and Gunnar Henderson? Like Corbin Carroll's been such a bust, and you look back and you're like, well, he's only had like one good season, and then you look at Gunnar Henderson and you're like, well, he had only had like one good season, and he took to another level. Corbin Carroll went way backwards. People will say it's the shoulder. Nobody really knows it's the shoulder. We're just guessing. Yeah, Sonny should take chances. Julio Rodriguez is having a terrible year so far.
That is also true.
And you looked at him and you're like, well, he's had 2 really good seasons. I'm safe with him.
Julio versus Bobby Witt was a choice, and I went 1 for 2 on that choice. I split my decisions on that, and the Witt one's doing a little bit better.
Gunnar Henderson looks like I can see an easy scenario where Gunnar Henderson gets picked ahead of Bobby Witt next year. He gets picked that high.
He's even giving you bags, 13 bags.
He's $1 ahead of him going into tonight on the earned auction value calculator. And then you factor in going forward how good that Orioles lineup is going to be year after year.
Yep.
I can see it. We'll see how the rest of the year goes. There's obviously a lot of baseball to be played, but I can see an easy case for Henderson as a top 5 or maybe even a top 3 pick next year.
Indeed.
Yeah,
I could see it too.
Yeah.
All right. We'll sign off on that note. Thanks everybody for jumping in on the live stream with us there. Or if you're listening on the podcast, thanks to Homerun Forecast and the Draftkings PickSix. If you like this podcast, please smash that like and subscribe button. Please give us a review. And if you really are so inclined, go check out what we have to offer at RotoWire. RotoWire.com/pod gives you a free peek behind the paywall for a couple of days. No credit card required. Just go to RotoWire.com/pod, put in a valid email address, and off you go. That's going to wrap up today. We have got tomorrow, we got James Anderson and the mailbag podcast there. So that should be good. If you haven't sent any prospect question to him, at Twitter at RealJRAnderson. And then on Thursday, I've got Casey Bubba joining me for the podcast there. We're going to talk Giants, and we're going to talk about some real life trade targets there. See who's going to get dealt at the deadline. Stay tuned for that. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care.